Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying time is here. That's right, we're still talking 1996's Scream on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal, Patrick Hamilton, coming to you once again from Woodsboro, the kind of town that shuts down at 5 p.m. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we are dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. We're going to unpack all the goriest of details of Wes Craven's classic Scream in the hopes that a young high school student's untimely end is just the beginning of the jokes that we can make at their expense. And as always, if there's only one person I trust that if I ask her, "Oh, Mr. Killer, will you let me go through, or am I going to be your victim?" She'll just cut my arm and then flail at killing me for a very long time. The one, the only Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing today, Gina?
I'm fine, but I had a different setup. I thought you would say that I would be the only one you trust to stab you lightly in the side.
That's right. We'd be trading poking at you type of stabs.
Yeah, just a little stab. Not anything serious. Just something on the side.
We might have to amend our game at the end to choose your own stab venture, which is if you could pick any part of your body to be stabbed lightly so that you might not be brought up on murder charges, what part of that body would it be and why?
Are we picking now, or are we waiting until the end?
Oh, well, let's introduce our guest and then we'll decide. Okay. So I don't mean to scare you, Gina, but we are not alone. That is right. We have a special guest. She is, of course, a TV critic for The Hollywood Reporter, and she's the leading expert in how hot Antonio Banderas is on her new podcast, all about Almodovar, the one, the only Inkoo Kang. How are you doing today?
Hi, please stab me in the armpit.
Yeah, the armpit would be pretty good. Yeah,
I would think that, but there's a muscle connected to that. Now, you're not going to be able to raise your arm anymore.
How often do they do that anyway?
You would be surprised. When I got hit by a car and I had my collarbone broken, I was surprised how terrible I was at being able to accomplish it.
I also have had my collarbone broken, and I was surprised by how well I was able to drive on LA freeways with one hand. This is why the LA freeways are terrible, but I could do it.
Listen, I think you've already demonstrated your bona fides here, because there is no way that I would have been able to recover as well as you. So I think you are in way better shape to take on this kind of damage. Gina, what say you?
Oh, gosh. My initial thought would be the leg, but there's so many ways stabbing someone in the leg could go wrong.
Yeah, there's an artery there.
Yeah, if you get someone in the thigh, they could drop pretty fast.
Yes.
I guess probably upper arm, maybe, opposite side of the armpit. I could probably be all right with that.
You're going for an outie rather than an innie on that.
Right. And I'm going to use I'll kind of aim my left arm for it, because I don't use that arm that much.
Mm-hmm. I'm of the thought that I think I could take one of those stabs to the upper shoulder, the Die Hard injury. I think I could take one of those. Which, of course, young people only know as a battery commercial now. God damn it. Can Bruce Willis, is he alive? Do you think he experiences joy?
No, because he stars in M. Night Shyamalan movies.
But, this is that
he really has been dead the whole time.
Oh, Gina, that might be the funniest fucking joke you've ever said in 4 years. And I mean that as a genuine compliment. That is genius.
Wow, that just flew right out of my mouth.
I know. That's the thing, though, Gina, is I'm a machine gun. I scatter semi-funny shit in the hopes of hitting something that's really good. And you're a sniper. When you have something funny, just bang. I love that.
I have a question before we get into Scream.
Sure.
Why is your podcast called Kill by Kill?
Very briefly, when we started this, one of the rages in podcasting was minute by minute shows. In fact, Gina and I were on the same, not the same episodes, but the same minute by minute podcast of The Boy Next Door. And I wanted to talk about Friday the 13th, but I thought talking about it minute by minute would just ruin it. It would be terrible. And so I thought, but if you did it kill by kill, that might be better. And then from that moment on, that was the name of it. And I approached Gina and she said yes for reasons I still don't understand.
Because you compliment my joke telling ability, clearly.
I have to. They're good.
We started off kind of more focusing on the kills themselves, and then it kind of transitioned to talking about the characters, and now we just kind of really focus on just weird aspects, like a lot of like background stuff and all.
Yeah, because honestly, like neither one of us are makeup effects people. We don't have that background. And part of it was getting into the details. I knew I wanted to talk about details because that's one of the best things about Friday the 13th. There are no characters. So if you're going to talk about them, you have to imbue them with characters sometimes. You have to read into every action and take in every detail in the hopes that informs you of who they are. Of course, in Scream, they're more fully formed characters, but it's still very worthy of discussion. But that is the reason why we are kill by kills. We pass the time talking about a particular movie by the amount of deaths that occur.
Okay,
that was more answer than she probably wanted, but we are incapable of giving a yes or no answer to anything.
I'm just genuinely surprised, and this is no reflection on your podcast. That are you ready for it?
Sure.
That there's like a real answer.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, I toured around town trying to sell people on this idea, and I was told podcasting is over and you'll never get anywhere doing it. And I'm like, I don't need to go anywhere. I work in TV. I don't need this. I want to talk about Friday the 13th characters. I want to talk about the weird ways they die. And people are like, no, thanks. And for some reason, Gina was like in a lull and just in a place where she was reaching for anything. And she said yes. And lo and behold, over 4 years later, we're still at it.
Congrats on your anything.
Yeah, we're still in the deep end. So now, Inkoo, you are a recent convert to scary movies. Was there a reason why you held off for so long? Were you kind of a scaredy cat growing up?
I am absolutely a scaredy cat. And actually, Scream is one of the movies that made me a scaredy cat.
Oh.
Because it was the first slasher I had ever seen. I think I was like 14. Now it's very funny because I'm really surprised by how bloodless Scream is compared to so much of what I've seen since. But
even on TV, like, yeah. Compare this to, The Walking Dead or our other project, Hannibal. Like, there's way more blood and guts in Hannibal than in Scream.
I think like the knives go in, but nothing comes out. And then suddenly there's like a giant pool of red on someone's clothes.
Yeah.
But at the time I was horrified by how bloody something like how bloody a movie could be. Mm-hmm. And it was so scary that I just had no interest in watching any more scary movies. Somehow, anyway, watched Scream 2 in the theaters. And then just didn't watch any scary movies. And then I think recently I listened to the podcast, the Scaredy Cats podcast, which I know has like a very mixed reception in the horror world. And they were talking about Scream. I thought, I haven't seen this movie in so many years. I should rewatch it to see what I get out of it now. And I was so scared that I turned it off. Like within the first 3 minutes, I called up a friend who loves Scream. And basically we were on the phone together while we watched over Zoom. And then I thought, oh, this is a delightful movie. And that was 2 months ago. So then we rewatched Scream 2. He says he's going to get me to watch Scream 3 and Scream 4, but he has warned me that Scream 3 is a very hard sell because it's a very bad movie.
Yeah, I would look at it like a TV pilot that was based on a movie. That's how I would view Scream 3. It's underwhelming, and it's a shame because there's so many people who should shine in that particular circumstance. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be an interesting rewatch whenever we get to it in the next year, because I think we're gonna try to do the Screams before the fifth one comes out. And in the hopes that it's the monkey's paw that actually gets movie theaters to open back up again, and our country to act responsible. Sure, why not?
But because this was my first slasher movie, I like all of the genre, like self-awareness completely went over my head. And so I think I gleaned pieces of it, like as I grew up, and Scream just became so permeated in the culture.
Right. Yeah.
But I think something like there's like a weird dialogue to me between Scream and Buffy, which is also another like extremely genre self-aware mix of horror and I
Sure.
And I think Buffy was just so much more speed at that time in my life. But I'm really coming around on horror.
Well, one of the things about it is it's a very elastic genre. It can encompass a lot of different things. You can combine action and horror. You can combine comedy and horror. You can combine dread is another thing where it's just sustained dread. That's its own little lane. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about it, is it finds its own way into keeping itself vibrant. And when it gets into ruts, that's where it starts to suck. And Scream is a weird, at the time, antidote for what was a genre that had run aground of what had made its bones. It had been so vibrant in the 80s, and it wasn't just slashers. Like, there's a lot of different kinds of horror movies. There was a lot of imagination, but they got very bogged down into horror is about franchises. And in the end, franchises can be fun, but the thing about horror is it can start in so many different places. Why always weigh it down to continuity? And weirdly enough, Scream would become one of its own victims of that. And it's interesting how it dealt with it over time, as you will see in Scream 3 and 4.
These days, you've got to have a sequel.
You've got to have oh my God. All right, so let's just get into this. We resume this film where we left it, just after the world's worst horror movie character, Randy, preemptively ends the movie for us in a very hot Billy and Stew sandwich, which they will go on to repeat. And we hear when Stu asks him, well, what would your motivation be if you were the killer? And he says, it's the millennium. Motives are incidental, which begs the question, and I will pose it to you both. Are motives also incidental in the millennium?
That reference is just starting to gather a little bit of dust. Just a tap. You could probably blow it off rather than having to grab a giant Swiffer and bat at it.
Were you guys also charmed that there was like a crowded video store in that scene?
Yeah. Every time people get close, like they're all up in each other's face, and it's one of those things that I think we'll appreciate. I would hope that we would appreciate more once we regain that capacity of closeness, that we will not think of it as common, and it's small change stuff. Like it actually means a lot to be able to have a close conversation and yell at one another in an open video store where you supposedly work. Randy should be fired. He's a terrible video store clerk.
One thing I do like about this movie is that there are 2 times when a girl guesses who the killer is. I think it's Rose McGowan's character and Sydney. And both times they assume it's Randy who's the killer, which I think is a brilliant piece of self-mockery. And I think there's so much really wonderful self-mockery in this movie. There was like a joke I put up on Twitter about, I think it was something along the lines of, oh, like, this is just like one of those like Wes Carpenter movies.
Yeah.
And for Wes Craven to put that line in, I thought was really funny. And I know this movie is like very self-referential, but I feel like it doesn't get enough credit for being self-deprecating.
I mean, it was very revolutionary at the time, but it suffers from that thing of doing something so well, and when everyone else begins to pick up on it as a method of humor and being, the sort of red herringness of this sort of becomes the mystery slasher comes back into vogue. And it begins to look like, well, I've seen this before. And it's like, the reason you've seen it before is because this did it so well. Everyone else said, we got to get in on that action.
But worse.
But, well, it's always going to be worse. Well, that's the thing about, hitting the same drum beats. You, at a certain point, as good as Funky Drummer is, the 500th time you use that sample, some of the power goes away. Funky Drummer in and of itself is a world-class breakbeat, but it also is so, used so often. It simply drains it of some of that emotional impact over time. So you have to find ways to reinvent this type of wheel in the same way that Williamson forced himself to reinvent the slasher wheel. And then Craven on top of that, with his sense of humor and his knowledge of the genre, and also not wanting to repeat the mistakes he found the horror genre had plugged itself with. I think it just is a perfect storm of a motion picture.
I agree. I just listening to you guys. I'm like, yeah, I'm like nodding in agreement. I have died.
One of the things here that I really loved is, and we talked about it briefly in the previous episode, but the panic has set in here in Woodsboro. So you see people reacting in ways they might not otherwise. A man locks up and enters a car in the passenger seat and doesn't put on a seatbelt when they drive away. I'm like, put on that seatbelt. A young mom is forced out of the city park before her picnic is through. Coffee shops close early. Dogs and cats living together. This is Central California mass hysteria. What's happening here? And then they have a conversation with Dewey. It's Tatum and Sydney. And they look around the town and it's empty. And Tatum goes, it reminds me of the town that dreaded sundown, which is a deep fucking reference in Scream. I think the first time I heard about the movie was from Scream. And the only reason I remember it is because at one point, the killer dispatches a young woman with a knife attached to a trombone. I'm not making that up.
I feel like he sort of dropped that in there with the intent of people seeking out this movie to see if it's a real movie or not.
Yeah, and you will learn it is one of the sweatiest horror movies ever made, and it's more of a police procedural. If you've seen Zodiac, you've felt the vibe of the town that dreaded sundown, at least the original. I have never watched the remake. Have you, Gina?
No, I have not.
Although some people state it's not actually a remake, but a reboot. I don't know. I don't know. I cannot speak to it. I can speak to the fact that the killer attaches a knife to the end of a trombone and kills a woman who's strapped to a tree with it.
I mean, that's just, you don't want to get too close.
No, no.
It's a very
But it also
COVID
feels like
way.
like a really long erection joke.
We are 2 days out from Jeffrey Toobin, so I'm just going to pretend that we're
Jeffrey
not.
Trombonin is more like it.
Oh no.
And I think from our discussion in part 1, where we don't get a ton of Tatum, she's sprinkled in. It's very light in the spice of Tatum. She's much more seen in the second half until her unfortunate end. But I do think that Tatum at least understands the concept that if your mother was raped and brutally murdered, it's not an automatic turn on. And I appreciate that about her.
Because nobody else seems to get it.
No one else gets this. And she's like, you know what? That was a really traumatic thing that happened to you. And, he should really understand that. Like, she is an actual good friend. My question to you both, is Tatum an actual good friend to Sydney? I vote yes. What do you say?
She does sort of bring up everybody knows your mom was a slut.
Yeah.
Which that part gave me pause.
Yes.
But
she's also trying to relate to her about the reality of the situation. She's not trying to sugarcoat it, nor does she say it in an accusatory way that she believes it. Just that if it's said so many times, one is left with the only option of at least considering it as the truth.
I think there's like a really semi-precious, semi-good line. It so many of these Kevin Williamson lines really sit on that fence.
Yeah.
I think where Skeet Ulrich said something like, it's all a movie, only you can't pick your genre.
Yes.
And I think that if Tatum could pick her genre, she would end up in Legally Blonde. She's written to be a ditz, but she's also a ditz who gets it.
She does. She understands the reality of the situation. Now, she doesn't always necessarily want to sit in it and just be real. She has a different attitude around that, but I also believe that she is concerned for people's welfare, and that's genuine, and that does come across. I wish they had more conversations that didn't have to do with their boyfriends. That's something that you can tell is a man wrote this situation.
I think her death is also sort of the one that of the three. Well, let's see. I guess we only really have 2 deaths of teenage girls, right? But if we compare her death to Drew Barrymore's in the beginning, it feels much more sort of like a retaliatory death. I think one thing that's really fun about that death is that it's almost an accidental one, in that Ghostface has to very impulsively think on his feet, which he doesn't generally have to. He usually has a stabbing plan. But with this one, he sees that there's an opportunity to do something else. And so I think that's what makes that death fun. But on the other hand, she sort of taunts him. And so through her taunting and her wrongness, I think that the scene right before she dies sort of makes us glad that this basically this bimbo sort of gets it. And I think there's a little bit something there with her outfit too. She has this ridiculous, very fun, very insane mini skirt. It's orange. There's a spiral pattern on both sides. One is basically right where the center of the spiral on the front is right where her vagina would be, and the other one is right where her butthole would be. And so it's I think there's sort of this weird invitation to laugh, and so it feels a little bit sadistic in a way that the other death of Drew Barrymore doesn't.
I think there's you're very right in a lot of ways. I think that there's the other component to what makes that sequence different is that, well, as you said in the beginning, she almost dies by accident because up until that point, she is winning this confrontation. Once she is aware that there's a genuine danger and it's not just some dick running through the hallways, because that is her previous experience with a ghost face, is a dick running through the hallways going boogity boogity boogity. So she goes into this thinking, I'm in this situation again. And when she recognizes the danger, she is able to punch him, kick him, hit him in the face with the refrigerator, hit him in the balls with a beer bottle.
Yeah,
I mean, she hits him in the fucking face.
It was very annoying he didn't just sort of keel over. I found that very unrealistic.
Yes, but he does. I mean, in comparison, and we mentioned this last time, but it's very true. In comparison to other slasher killers historically, Ghostface takes damage and has to recover. He's not immortal and he's not immune to pain. So up until this point, like he's taking it. And because he's in front of the only escape route, she takes a different one, which she should be able to fit into. And the only reason she doesn't, and this is kind of buried in the sound mix, is because her sweater gets caught on that doggy door and you begin to hear the rip. Otherwise, she would have escaped.
Yes.
And so it's one of those things where it has more to do with bad luck than the person behind that mask's skill. And that's why I think she still retains the upper hand in the situation. And it's just the cards came up, deuces for her.
And I think also in Tatum's defense, she is also a film nerd, but she's a much more bearable one than Randy.
Oh, yes.
She has like I spit on your garage line, and it's like a toss away, and it's perfect.
Yes. I mean, Williamson is really throwing them out here in terms of his dialogue choices. And if you were to hear this coming out of someone else's, typewriter, you'd be going, oh, come on. But for whatever reason, it just works within the tone that this film sets. Like not every movie can have the ability to have two cops talking to one another, one of them smoking and the other one furiously eating an ice cream cone.
I love that.
That is unique to Scream.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you think it was just a happy accident that they cast an actor named Jamie to be playing a scene in which he's saying, Jamie, look behind you?
I love that.
It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. And
yes.
I'm sure I must have made the connection, before watching this, but I watched it and I'm like almost doing that Leonardo DiCaprio, like pointing at the screen thing. I'm like, that's fucking funny. That's very clever. And I'm like, well, that kind of had to have been an accident.
Yeah. Yes, because I looked up who else was being considered for that particular role, because it's almost like everyone here auditioned for every male role and they kind of pieced it out. But two other notable actors who tried to become Randy was Breckin Meyer, who I think would have been good.
They would have been interchangeable. They played the exact same kind of characters. Certainly in the 90s.
Yes. But I don't think he would have been as hateable as Jamie Kennedy's Randy. And then the other one would have been too hateable, and that's Jason Lee.
Oh, God.
And there's an insufferable amount of smug in that dude that just would have been too fucking much. And also, he would have looked like everyone's, uncle who will buy you beer in comparison to everyone else.
Well, I don't know, because Matthew Lillard was like 25 when he.
But Matthew Lillard still looks young in this movie. He everyone is obviously over the age of 18, but he doesn't look like, in comparison to the early Friday the 13th movies that we watched, which people always claim are teens. And you're like, no fucking way are these people teens. They're in their 20s and they're not pretending to be teens. Here, he at least looks like he's a senior who skipped a grade.
Or two.
One of the nice things about that sheriff scene with Dewey is that he is wearing the same boots. So, well, again, a boot clue, something we haven't seen since the early Friday the 13th. We love a good boot clue. And then I guess one thing that we talked about briefly off air, but I really do want to talk about here on, and that is the Craven villain. Okay, so Wes Craven, there are certain tropes or motifs that he loves to revisit. He's not afraid to revisit a concept like the bathtub sequence in Deadly Blessing and then be revisited in A Nightmare on Elm Street. But also the family thing, he's very into that. And there's a lot of family stuff happening in this movie. But the other component that makes a Craven villain that you would not see necessarily in a Carpenter or in a Tobe Hooper or anyone else is that Craven's villains have sex. They talk about sex. Sex is a component of them being a human being. And in this movie, I think there's a lot of sexual energy going across the board. And Billy and Stu are sexual. And that makes them different. It makes them hypocrites in a sort of conservative slasher reading. But it also makes them very different from the vast majority of things that we had seen before. It's not like you saw Chucky and like, oh, that dude knows how to fuck. That's not a component. It will become a component.
You know somebody
in
out
the next
there.
movie, in Bride of Chucky,
Yeah.
you do learn he knows how to fuck.
Freddie knows
I'm
how to finger.
glad we only spent a short time on that.
It's important for people to know that he has a working penis and he knows how to use it.
And considering the week that we're recording this, it's been very penisy, and I'm tired of talking about them.
I know. Listen, these notes made a lot more sense in a I have to yank it immediately, no matter how many cameras are on me world. But
followed by, oh no, Borat trapped me unbuttoning my pants because it's 2020.
Yeah, as a man who's tucked in shirts a lot of his life, you don't need to lie down and really dig in to make that happen. It's a quick succession of movements. So
because people are still getting fooled by Borat.
Only
Somehow.
the dumbest of people, though.
Somehow.
I think that's somewhat reassuring that the dumbest amongst us are still falling into that trap.
But yes, anyway.
So I feel like one of the big things that this movie is doing is basically letting Sydney have sex and also live. And the movie is very almost self-congratulatory about this, right? But one thing I like, going back to your point about Craven villains, and I say this as someone who has seen, I think, maybe 3 Wes Craven movies, is that both of the... So there's 3 main boys in this, the 2 killers and Randy, who says something like, I'm so glad I'm virgin, because he gets to also survive the movie, even though that wasn't a necessity. I think one thing I like is that both of the killer boys are such fuckboys in such classically teenage ways. I think you guys said something in the last episode where Skeet Ulrich was playing Johnny Depp, but he's sort of playing Skeet Ulrich playing Johnny Depp playing James Dean. Yeah. And I just love that it's sort of this like classic teenage greasy haired 90s like 2 long bangs look. And that Matthew Lillard looks like Gumby, but he is also able to fuck somehow. And the fact that like you have like a super cool guy who probably fucks bad, and then also Gumby who I assume fucks bad. I feel like that covers like the full spectrum of how teenage boys fuck, and that is
Mhm.
something that I really appreciate about this movie.
I gotta say, probably surprisingly good in the sack, Dewey.
Not a teenage boy.
I think, well, true, but I just think that Dewey is probably a tender, sensitive lover.
He listens to other people for
He
the most part.
wants to please people. He's a
He's
people
had a
pleaser.
lot of ice cream licking practice.
Listen, that mustache isn't just for looks. Like, he uses it. Oh, I'm sorry. I just threw up in my mouth.
I was like, do you know what a mustache feels like? Because
Well, that's for me to know and you to find out. Yes, I do. So while we're on this, why don't we get into, before we get to the rest of the plot mechanics and me noticing which beer ads are prominently featured. Let's talk about these rules from Randy. These rules suck. And I don't mean to, I know we've done this territory before, but these rules are ephemeral. They don't apply to the most popular of horror films. They are subjective, and they are entirely based on like a casual reading of Men, Women, and Chainsaws. And as such, I find that it has ultimately done more harm than good with people's understanding of horror movies. You can never have sex is not a thing. Retaining a hymen does not make you outsmart a masked killer. And the preeminent example of this, of course, is the Friday the 13th franchise, in which every final person, with the exception of one 12-year-old kid and maybe that girl who went to Manhattan, because I don't know what the fuck's happening there, everyone else has had sex. This is not something that is a thing in that franchise. And when it comes to it, it all seems to land in the lap of Laurie Strode, who is a virgin by choice because her selection of guys in high school sucks. And she knows it. And for some reason, her girlfriends are like, please participate in this. And she doesn't want to. And so for some reason, this has become a rule. It isn't. It's just, she simply doesn't want to fuck someone who just to cross it off her list. Let Laurie Strode live, y'all. It's not a rule. So now we get to you could never drink or do drugs.
Wait. I feel like we need to like unpack this more. Sorry.
Okay. No.
So, okay. So when you say, I am not super familiar with the horror genre, as I have already stated. I think that if it is true that the whole virginity immunity effect is not really a horror genre, I think it's sort of worth discussing why people associate it with the genre. Like, I think that's really interesting, because initially when you were talking about this, my first impulse, a very cynical one, was to basically say, well, this is a really easy way for Kevin Williamson to distinguish this movie from all of the other ones, right? To say my movie, all of these other movies are formulaic, but mine is not, and I'll show you how it's not by subverting it. So I think like maybe that's partly like why that's there, but I also wonder if the reason why people have really glommed onto this theory, other than the fact that, you know, it's something that a lot of people talk about, is because people are trying to make sense of the horror genre if they're not that familiar with it. I think basically when you think of sort of horror or the slasher genre specifically, the overwhelming image you're going to get is of some man or masculine figure cutting up girls, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's not accurate, even if it's not statistically, I think that the point is that, like, it's interesting to me that people have really glommed onto this theory, and why that's a meaningful theory to them, or why that's a persuasive theory. Am I going anywhere with this?
You are.
Okay.
I don't want to dominate the conversation. So, I mean, Gina, what do you think your theory is on this particular thing?
I mean, I think in terms of, the rules, I think that, he is being sort of pointedly saying how, a lot of slasher movies after a certain point just followed very much a formula that, that quote unquote punished people for doing things that normal teenagers did.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Inkoo is right that, Williamson wanted to, let you know that, he was aware of this and that it wasn't going to be this kind of movie. And of course, the gag that carries over into Scream 2 is that I am fairly certain Randy does have sex shortly before he is murdered. So, all things pass, as it were. He turned out to be right the whole time. And again, it's very winky and self-aware. There's also, I think, my theory is, Billy more or less kind of, I wouldn't say he browbeats her into having sex. I mean, she seems like she kind of is all right with it, by the time they actually go ahead and do it. But, the fact that he keeps bringing it up, he's trying to humiliate her. And so, I think it's definitely kind of, pushing the whole idea of, this is to punish you. This is to punish you.
And because this particular film is very much of you're going to pay for having sex, because that is the actual, ground zero.
It's not just her pay. It's the whole town has paid because Sydney's mother had sex.
Yes.
I mean, how many people have died by the time this movie's over? And it started because Sydney's mom liked to sleep around, which, okay, that's not great. But I mean, it's not the absolute, ground zero worst thing a person can do.
Yes. For whatever reason, it's like a small explosion happening near a fault line, and then it causes this ripple effect. And all of a sudden, half of California is in the ocean.
And also, I mean, I feel like, as a mother myself, that Billy's mother just abandoning him because the dad cheated on her. But yet Billy blames Sydney's mom for this. It's like, no, your mom takes some of the lion's share of the blame for this. You don't literally throw out the baby with the bathwater. If your marriage goes south or whatever, you don't just, walk away from the kid too.
What about like his dad? His dad was the one who was actually doing the cheating. Right,
and that's the thing. Everything is right, exactly. Everything points to this is Sydney's mom's fault. She is the trigger point for all of this. Well, she's dead and she's still paying for it.
And this movie has so much to do with how the men in it look at women. Like, it's all one-sided. And they prey on women's having to be nice on the phone to someone you've never heard, or not causing a fuss when someone gets your way when you want to walk out of a garage. It's just, all of this stuff is about terrible, toxic masculinity. And so part of this reflection in Randy is him pointing out these very conservative tropes within the concept of slasher movies. But really, you're looking inside the mind of Randy and him rationalizing why he isn't having sex. I'm not having sex because then I'll be able to outwit a killer.
I've made the choice to keep myself safe. Uh-huh. Yeah, Randy, I told myself that too when I was in high school.
Right. I can drink beer, but I won't go crazy because I still need to keep my wits about me because I'm smarter than all these peons. And I won't take these social cues. I'll continue to act like an ass as a defensive mechanism. Therefore, I won't tell people I'll be right back. Like, all of it has less to do with horror movies and everything to do with Randy.
It's
who
also
probably would have voted for Bush 43 if he had lived.
it's also worth pointing out that everybody's gathered around, they're all watching Halloween. It's a mostly male audience at this party.
Mm-hmm.
All the boys are concerned about is, when are we going to see boobs?
Yeah.
And I do think that's kind of funny, that leads into well, if you even get a whiff of sexuality near you, you're probably going to be killed.
Yes.
But I think one of the reasons why we're so obsessed with Randy is because Randy is this really wonderful depiction of a certain kind of viewing mode that maybe is something particularly relevant to horror, where you simultaneously enjoy a film and feel superior to it at the same time. Because you think to yourself, I know what's coming, like all of this is a formula.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, and like that kind of viewing mode is also really potent when you're a teenager, right? Like you get like the sense that you figured everything out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. And also as like critics, we also have this mode of enjoying something, but also thinking we're like outsmarting the movie that we're watching. And so I'm sorry, like we're all Randy.
Yeah.
I feel like we have to admit this.
I think admitting it is the first part of.
Oh, it's totally a Randy. I think I touched on this in the last one. I was definitely used to be I know everything about these kinds of movies, and it was a wonder that I had friends.
I definitely know that. Well, I was friendless in high school for a lot of reasons, but probably because I was too sarcastic by half and used it as a real shield because I was afraid of everything, including getting hurt. But later, like when I was a Universal Studio tour guide, like the part of the reason I got that job so easy is because I knew all that shit already. And the only reason I think some of those people wanted to be my friend initially was because I would tell them all the information they would need to know to actually get that job. And I won them over eventually and learned from this that the reason they actually stuck around me as friends was not because I knew really stupid shit about the $6 million man. Like, they did see something in me worth knowing. And you have a bunch of people in this movie who really just want the knowing. They just want the benefits of knowledge. They don't really want to be emotionally available for that other person, with the exception of Tatum and Sydney. And to a lesser degree, Gail. Gail's a tough nut to crack. It's hard to know there, but also she's in the worst place of having to be the established woman in a career position who constantly has to reinforce that she knows what she's doing because everyone will discount her, which is essentially what she tells Dewey when they have their little date. And now I've blown the minds of everyone on the show.
I'm digesting what you're saying.
I'm waiting.
Am I talking out of my ass? I might be talking out of my ass.
No.
I'm waiting to talk about the scene where Sydney is thrown out of the window.
All right, let's get there. So like a bunch of plotty shit happens here. We talked a little bit about the costumes. It looks like everyone is shopped at the Secret World of Alex Mack store.
And yet it looks right, though. It looks right for the time period. It looks time
appropriate. It's just amazing.
All the girls' clothes are tight fitting. All the boys' clothes are like 2 sizes too big for them. Right.
And Rose McGowan's nipples probably earn SAG wages. They have more screen time than most under 5 actors in the movie. I don't know if you noticed this, Gina, but it wouldn't be Kill by Kill if I didn't point out that the heater in the garage is the same as the faulty heater in Scream for Help.
Is it now?
It is the exact. I put them next to one another. It's fucking freaky.
I can't imagine that that's an homage, though.
No, I think it was just a heater that was in those two houses. Why in the world
would you have an homage to Scream for Help?
Well, speaking of homages, the one that I know is an homage is Ghostface's robe is all sparkly like the ski mask in Prom Night. Like, oh, Jesus. Come on. We get it. You have a hard-on for Prom Night. I don't get it, but I see it. I see you.
Do you think that Ghostface sits at home and like cuts out all of the little V's on the bottom of his robe?
I think that costume essentially came like that. The weird thing is like that mask was a real mask that they licensed, which is why for the TV show.
Oh wait, so it was not made for this?
No, they had designed all sorts of masks, including like Halloween, clown homages, like the first thing Michael wears. And they had tried their own versions of Screams, and they kept coming back to the thing that gave them the inspiration to try it in the first place, which was this Ghostface mask. And so they're like, I think we just need to bite the bullet and license it, which is why they can make as many of those masks as possible, because it doesn't come part and parcel with Scream. They have to negotiate every single time they make a movie to license that mask.
That's fascinating.
And if you were just wondering who does the vast majority of the killing, believe it or not, both Billy and Stu are very equitable in their relationship. While Stu starts off in the lead with both Steve and Casey, Billy does pick up the pace. He kills Principal Himbry and he kills Tatum. So they're both kind of good and bad at it at the same time.
Which is odd because you can't tell the difference between which one is which, and yet when they're not wearing the costumes, Stu is rather a bit taller than Billy.
Yeah, it's insane. There's such a height difference between them, and it's never reflected in Ghostface. It's only ever reflected in the grunts they make.
Yeah, I can definitely tell when it's Matthew Lillard grunting.
Speaking of grunting, I just wanted to note very quickly that Stu sends Billy and Sydney up to his parents' bedroom. They have a very small bed for adults, but also mismatched night tables. Oh, come on. You've got like a 10-room house and mismatched night tables. What is happening in this house? No wonder Stu has turned out this way. This is craziness. This house is insane.
Yeah, it's one of those like houses that you see a lot in horror movies where it just does not seem to end. Like you're just running through room after room after room after room.
And it's not like it's a Doctor Who sitch. Like it looks as big on the outside as it does on the inside.
Right, but it's like Hill House, huge. Where like you run through a room and then there's another door which takes you to another room, which takes you up a flight of stairs, which takes you into another room.
Yes. I guess we're down to, Billy's ribbed t-shirt. That's gross.
I actually, so one thing I really love about the third act of this movie, which I will say basically starts with Sydney having sex with Billy.
Yeah.
And then like the whole party sort of just going into complete chaos. One thing I absolutely love about the controlled chaos of this third act is that there are a bunch of fake outs. And so the movie seems even crazier than what you think it is. I think Gail Weathers crashes her car, Dewey ends up stabbed, Sydney falls out of a window. Initially you think Billy is dead, and so there's not that many deaths, but because almost everyone sort of gets it in some way, there's this real sense of like pure absolute unpredictability that I think makes this movie so fun.
I think I would have loved it if they had a post-credit sequence. Like I forget which Avengers movie where they're all sitting there having shawarma afterwards, but it would have been funny to just have like Dewey, Gail, Randy, and Sydney all sitting like a hospital cafeteria. They all got like neck braces and bandages on. They're just kind of quietly sitting there, just eating a sandwich and drinking coffee, and then it just like cuts to black.
I love that.
I think that's perfect way to end this movie. It's a shame that Kenny wouldn't be involved because Kenny eats 3 different bags of chips in the span of 10 minutes of this movie.
What else are you going to do when you're sitting in a van watching some teens party?
He's living in a van down by the river in his heart. This Kenny, man, I tell you, every once in a while, it's such a good performance because he's throwing a lot out there in just reactions to Gale. Like that's really where you're getting what you get of him as a character is him listening to Gale go off. But every once in a while, he looks over and is like, "Oh my God, we're gonna do something good," and she's like, "I can't wait to nail these fuckers. I'm gonna earn a Pulitzer Prize." He's like, "Oh, I'm just probably going to have this job. I'm looking forward to my next bag of chips." There's a human element to it that I think is beautiful. And then when he dies, it's a throat slashing and you think that's it for Kenny. But lo and behold, Billy kills Kenny and then manages to get him on the roof of that van.
And he's a large man.
What is Billy benching?
He is filled with Cheetos.
I mean, granted, Kenny seems to be comprised of only Cheetos and blood, and he's missing a lot of it by the time we see him again. Because there's blood on the ground in front of the door. There's blood all over the windshield. I mean, he is really letting it all out there.
Can we talk about for a second the bizarre way that they get the house to clear out of the rest of the party goers? Because
some people drift out normally, but yes, let's talk about the big.
I don't know why they're calling Randy to let them know that the principal has been murdered, but he has been, I believe, strung up by his guts on the football thingy, whatever you call it, the goalpost.
Can you tell that we were big athletes in high school? The football thing.
And everybody's like, "Oh shit, we got to see that before they take him down." And everyone's like, "Woo!"
Yeah, these are some really callous teenagers.
That's just a bunch of sickos in this town, man.
I mean, you would have thought that someone had announced that Dishwalla tickets are going on sale.
They're just hauling ass to see this murdered man get taken down by the coroner.
We gotta get there before they take him down.
And mind you, this is pre-Instagram, so there was no influencing they could have done with seeing their murdered principal.
It was brick and mortar influencing. It's who you could talk to. It was really personal that way. But yeah, that's the hilariously contrived manner of emptying out the house of everybody except Billy, Stu, Sydney, and Randy. Yes, and everyone else drunk drives their way out there, and they almost hit Dewey and Gale on the way out, and that's another practical effect thing where it's perspective, putting the cars as close to those actors as possible, and it really works. Like there's just some old school Wes Craven directing going on in this movie. It's just, I know we kind of, went overboard to a degree in the last episode, but it's really true, man. You're watching a guy who has made great movies and not so great movies. Just hone in on what makes a movie great and execute it perfectly. It's amazing that this film is as good as it is, given how toxic so much of the cast members are in their roles.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I think the other thing I really like about that scene where Gale almost runs over Sydney is that Gale at this point is completely out of her mind with fear.
Yeah.
And I think that's another reason why Gale is the most relatable character in the entire Scream franchise, because she's the only, I feel like everybody else basically acts like they're in a horror movie where basically someone is out to kill them, but they generally have like a sense of like what's going on. Whereas if I or Gale were in this situation, we would just completely go from like 0 to like nutbag in 3 seconds. There's like another scene where, I guess I'm going a little forward, but Gail has to shoot one of the killers, and basically her hand is shaking and she can't actually do it, and she just ends up sort of beat up. And I thought, yes, that's exactly me. If I was confronted with a killer and I had to stop him, I would definitely be unconscious within 2 seconds.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Sydney kind of a little too cool about it at the end.
But can I just mention the moment that I remember cheering in the movie theater, and it literally happened again when I watched this part of the movie just for this podcast, in which you have Stu reappear outside and he's going, Randy killed all these people. And Randy going, no, it's Stu. And she looks at both of them and like, yeah, both of them have the capacity to kill people, is the determination that she makes. And she slams the door in their faces, keeps the gun for herself and says, fuck you both. And I'm like, yes, finally. Holy shit. It is cruel in a certain way. But also, she's been fucked over enough. It's not really time for Sydney to be thinking about others at this point. She needs to make a decision to save herself in that moment, and she makes it. And that decisive nature elevates her character in that moment. I agree, she gets a little action hero-y in a lot of this, but I think part of that comes from the decision by Williamson and Craven, and this will go on, to make suspense sequences that are akin to action sequences in a Die Hard. You know, they're big, they're boisterous, they're running for their lives. And as a result, like, it's not quite intimate, quick kills like a Halloween or a Friday the 13th. So if you survive long enough, you're going to look like you're a bit invulnerable.
I think maybe it's a weakness of mine. I just don't think I can put one of my fingers into a bullet hole.
Yeah. That takes a lot of forethought. That I'm like, I might be able to like hit him maybe. Stu would probably think of pushing the television on his head, but actually let me just stick my finger right in there. At the very least, I'm definitely throwing up on him right after that.
I think that would have made it better if she had done it and gone, this is so gross, I have to react by throwing up. Yeah,
which would have probably thrown him off a little more.
And would have been a great Fly reference. Honestly.
That's how Joker should have ended.
Just throwing up on somebody, or somebody throwing up on him?
No, just like having his head bashed in by a television.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? You could have started that movie with his head bashed into the television. It would have improved the entire affair.
Anyway, sorry I brought up Joker.
This movie has one of those things that you think might be another Craven trying out an idea and then revising it later, but it's actually Williamson. He does the killer under the car bit. Now, he will recycle that idea for his draft of I Know What You Did Last Summer. And I think, personally, it's part of a really big chase sequence in that movie that I think is astounding. And I would say it comes off a little bit better in that than it does in Scream. I have a hard time believing that you can scramble under a car like that if you are the size of Stu Macher.
Yeah, that's a little bending reality a bit.
Yes. But, we're into the, craziness of this all. And of course, once it's revealed that it's a Billy and Stu, joint, I think we kind of have to talk about this relationship because it's a fantastic element, this queer element that happens that's all by their performance. Their physical intimacy with one another is, of course, based on the fact that they're both broken psychotics.
Well, I would say
sociopaths.
I would say you definitely, Billy is the brains of the operation, and Billy probably is the one who talked Stu into doing this.
Yes.
And I think that, Williamson probably read, if not he, I'd be surprised if he didn't read a few true crime novels about serial killers that work in pairs.
Yeah.
Because there's usually one that's kind of, and again, there is occasionally, a sexual element to it. I don't want to say
a Leopold and Loeb
right,
element to it.
Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole. I don't want to say romantic. It's sexual, and
yeah,
so one kind of has that over the other one. Usually, because one is struggling with his feelings, and that's the other one. That's how the other one's able to get that level of control over them. So yeah, that element is definitely there. Very interesting.
Yeah,
I know I don't want to bring the podcast down, but. And I know my chronology is wrong because Scream is 97, but it was just impossible not to think about Columbine when you get that reveal, because not that I think basically the idea that these two teenage boys who seem totally normal, because apparently all of that black trench coat mafia stuff was basically complete bullshit by the media.
Oh yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, this movie was brought up a lot in crimes related, with involving teenagers doing horrible things. This was pointed to a lot, in the late 90s into the early 2000s. I mean, if you go to the Wikipedia page, there's a whole section called controversy, and Columbine might even be listed there.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah, I think that just from the vantage of 2020, when all of the stuff of the late 90s get agglomerated together, it made it so much scarier, because the idea that there were these two boys who, there were these two straight white boys, basically, who no one suspected of anything and were just sort of going around killing girls that they had either dated or were sexually attracted to, seemed just a little bit too real, which then sort of made me respect the movie even more, but also just added this extra layer of horrifying real life frisson I didn't really want.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And I don't know that the filmmakers, it was necessarily their intention. I just think they tapped into an element of the zeitgeist that really resonates.
Yeah.
And all these years later, it resonates even more. It's that potent of a combination of factors where they're so angry at the sexual power women hold and can use without their knowledge, consent, or decree, that they literally flip into murderous psychopaths. They rev themselves up into this self-pity hatred, and then it all goes outward, and it's resonant. It really is. It's a very funny movie, but it also has this component that it cannot escape because it's a little too true.
And I think the other thing that makes me think about Columbine is that with Columbine, there was this big fear that video games were leading young men into violence. And here it's movies. And I'm really glad that Kevin Williamson has this very definitive, very smart angle on what role movies play in real life violence. I don't think it's 100% reliable, but basically the quote that I think Billy says is, movies don't create psychos, movies make psychos more creative. And I think that's 95% of the way true, right? But I think that anxiety about what is media doing to impressionable young minds or whatever, it seems very 90s and very now. And it just sort of adds even more to that Columbine comparison, even though I think Columbine was 99.
Yes.
Anyway,
yes.
I'm glad that you guys didn't think that I was completely off there.
No.
It's watching it today, that particular aspect of it is both fascinating and chilling in a way that I didn't quite grasp when I saw it initially.
Yeah, I think well, as I was a clueless dude, so I think I would have had the most surface reaction to it all. It is only with the amount of time and experience that I've had that I can see unfortunate components of those people in myself and feel better that I have evolved, but also understand that that movement can work in the other way too. And it can be displayed in other fashions in which if we're to decide that we're going to police other people's enjoyment of horror or what horror movies they like, or be gatekeeping in some fashion, like that's all these elements. And this is just taken to that murderous extreme. But there's so many points of that tribalism that are still incredibly prevalent, incredibly dangerous, and all around us, unfortunately.
And I think part of what makes all of that discourse so fascinating and so human is this combination of unknowable danger plus extreme youth. And there's a line where after Sydney tells the killers that she has called the police, where Matthew Lillard says, "My mom and dad are going to be so mad at me." And it's just like the kind of thing where I don't want to bring this like again to Columbine, but like you can sort of like think it, or you can sort of like see that, imagine that thought going through every single teenage killer, right? Like if I don't, I'm sorry to be like a bummer, like shoot myself so that I don't have to pay for any of the things that I did. Like that's going to be their response. My mom and dad are going to be so mad at me. And one thing I really love about the Matthew Lillard performance is how like completely drowned his face is in bodily fluids. There's tears. There's
he crumples. He crumples.
Yes,
and you know that as soon as the cops would catch up with him, and they would eventually. I mean, I don't know what their end game.
Dehydration, basically.
He's gonna, and he's gonna turn on Billy. They like the minute the cops would have leaned on him, he would have turned on Billy. He just the minute he was facing the idea, oh my God, she called the cops. We might not get away with this. He goes to pieces.
Yeah. I mean, at one point, the phone rings and he says out loud, "Should I let the machine get it?" He's that out of decision-making capacity.
I love what he's like. I love when Billy hands him the phone, says, "Talk to her." He's like, "Hello." he's like already afraid of her. Like, oh shit, she's got the upper hand here, and
it's none of what is happening now.
This was not
in
the plan.
Aftermath of them penetrating one another. Oddly enough, they've released this tension that they have between the two of them, and he's been on the sharper end of that knife, and he can't handle it, and as a result, like there is a really beautiful performance happening here from Lillard.
Well, it kind of lets you know how dumb their plan is. I mean, it does work, and yet it doesn't work at the same time. It's like, okay, at what point did you decide, we're just going to stab each other a couple times, lightly, like you would, like, poke in a potato before you put it in the microwave. Not too hard. Don't puncture my lung or anything. Just, make me bleed a little bit. Yeah, all right, that sounds good. And again, to look at true crime, anytime somebody has staged a murder that they themselves have committed and made it look like, oh no, they attacked me too, it never holds up, because they are injured way less than the dead person is.
Yeah.
One recent one, there was I think there was a Netflix special about Jeffrey McDonald.
Yes.
Where his wife and very small daughters,
it's terrible.
were basically brutalized. They were unrecognizable. Whereas he had a little bump on his head.
He got a poking at you.
Little scratch on his side. And like, he got me. And now they're going to, they left you, with a scratch and, obliterated your family. That doesn't make any sense. Nor would this make any sense. That they're going to be the only survivors of the Great Woodsboro Massacre.
And yet the other component of this is that they go about trying to kill Dewey and Gail and Randy
and not
and
checking
Sydney.
and not checking that they're dead for one thing.
And they fail to do all of those things. There's a real, it doesn't feel fast and cheap. It feels like everything is thought through. And as a result, all these years later, that's one of the components that really holds up, is that, this very idea feels real to the motivations and the dynamics feel real. The results are not real in any way, shape, or form, which is why it feels so delightful when Stu gets a TV to the face.
What did you guys make of the umbrella stabbing?
Well, here's one thing about that umbrella stabbing that makes it even more brutal. And that is that the actress actually hit a part of his chest. She missed the protection plate.
Ooh.
And he actually had a heart surgery as a child, and it penetrated his scar tissue.
Ooh.
So he's really reacting to an umbrella penetrating his chest in that moment, because it really happened.
Is this Ulrich or Lillard?
No, it's Ulrich.
That's rough.
Yeah, it's fucking rough. It's really rough.
I will say that the fight scenes in this are very well done. They are like visceral.
I mean, compare this to that lady slapping that we saw in the original Friday the 13th. Like, there's actual fight choreography here that feels real to the situation they're in. And part of the reason why, Stu has been a Mack truck in comparison to Billy at this point in the movie. And one of the reasons she manages to get the upper hand on him is because he has been almost mortally wounded by his partner in crime.
Just stab a little.
Just stab, just nothing important.
Just a little stab right here between the ribs. Nothing important there.
Stab me a little. What do you want to do? So, and in the end, of course, Sydney triumphs in that she manages to get past Stu, and she is not fooled by Billy's sort of lying in wait bit. And of course, Randy calls that out, and she shoots him right in the head, which I don't know about you, Gina, but my theater, when I first saw it, erupted.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally.
And then this movie simply doesn't have the balls to kill off Dewey. But again,
God bless.
Dewey, a character I like.
Dewey's a gem.
He is.
A little too dumb to live, but he means well.
Too dumb to live, too stupid to die.
And the only guy in the movie who is not a complete and total creep.
Exactly. I mean, that is his saving grace, is that he is not a total creep.
Cotton isn't, I think, a total creep.
We don't really get to know Cotton until later, though.
Yeah, but as what we know of him here.
Cotton just collateral damage.
Yeah, I also think Cotton is righteously stupid, and as Billy notes, like, he was super easy to frame, and that gives them a lot of confidence.
Also, Sydney's
going
dad.
forward.
Yeah, Sydney's dad's all right. Yeah,
Sydney's completely helpless, useless dad.
And I think that's part of what the movie's aim is, in a sense of making youth dangerous. So that it wasn't just a movie aimed at teenage audiences. It also knew it would have a crossover with adults, and that they would be fearful of being unable to stop the dangerousness of youth in the 90s. And it's very much playing into that concept.
Yeah.
So that pretty much wraps up Scream. But before we go, of course, we should and must play Choose Your Own Death Venture. And that is where we decide, of the deaths presented in this motion picture, if you were forced to die one of those ways, which one would you choose and why? Up for bid, we have gutted in a patio chair, We have stabbed 3 times and then hung by a swing. You have, of course, stabbed a couple times in a principal's office. You have crushed your head crushed in a garage door, and a throat slitting. Then stabbed a whole bunch of times and having a TV dropped on your head. Although if Williamson had gotten his way, Stu would have lived and come back in Scream 3. So it's debatable whether or not Stu actually died, but for all intents and purposes, it's presented as if he does die. And then, of course, stabbed a few times, penetrated by an umbrella, and shot in the head. And so, Inkoo, as our guest, I choose you to go first.
I think as a TV critic, there would be something particularly poetic about having a TV fall on my head, fatally killing me.
I mean, think of the article headlines that would run in the Hollywood Reporter after that. I'm not sure how you would bring Boffo into it, but I would assume someone would really try.
Rude.
My apologies as an industry person.
Well, we lost her as a return guest. Thanks a lot, Patrick.
Aren't you owned by all the same people now?
Yes, as of 2 weeks ago. But we have standards.
Yeah, that's true. And you should retain them. All right, Gina, what say you?
I'm going to make a controversial observation here and say that if I was a sexually confused serial killer, I'd probably be Stu. I liked Stu. I don't know why I liked Stu. I found him charming in his murderous incompetence. Just he won me over with the whole hello. He's trying to, did you really call the police? I felt that eminently relatable. Sure. Yeah, I too am going to take just smash over the head with the television.
Now, are you going to be able to sweat that hard and spit that much? Because that is a lot of expectorate.
Probably, but also I am considerably smaller than him, so I probably would end up just bleeding out of the many minor to moderate stab wounds.
Would you get to the TV sequence?
Yeah, I don't even think I think I would just collapse somewhere in the hallway before I even make it to the living room.
It's weird now watching that. I instantly flash back to a movie that had not come out yet, I don't think, which is Gross Point Blank, where someone also dies by TV to the face. Yelling.
It happens in Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer too.
Oh, that's right.
Just smash the TV right over someone's noggin.
There's a lot of TV deaths.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it,
can't do that anymore. Can't do that anymore with the flat screens.
Yeah, it's true. They're not as dangerous, and you don't get all that electronics. It doesn't. Someone smashes into a TV and shocker too, don't they?
Yep.
Yeah. TV deaths, everybody. We found our new Get Bunked. All right. I think I'm going to go with Principal Himbry.
Wow.
Here's why. I like to look at myself in the mirror and comb my hair with just my hand and pretend I'm the Fonz. And I would love to participate in football in high school in some way, shape, or form. And probably the only way I'd ever get able to do it was be strung up on the football field by my own guts.
I'm glad you know yourself.
That's what most people say when they guest on the show. I'm glad you know yourself. I don't know that I want to, but okay. And so that just about does it. But before we go, Inkoo, can you tell people where they can find you and where they can hear more from you?
Sure. I am on Twitter at Inkoo Kang, INKOOKANG. I write for the Hollywood Reporter, and I am at the All About Almodovar podcast, which is about the movies of Pedro Almodovar. What we do is we call the podcast an introduction to loving the movies of Pedro Almodovar. And if you don't know who he is, you are really in for a treat. Sometimes he does some horror-related things as well, particularly in The Skin I Live In. But I think he's a really great filmmaker who likes to play a lot with genre. So So it seems like something that people might be interested in if they like horror.
Yes, I really encourage people to go through his filmography. And I think when I started, I viewed him in some way as some sort of stuffy art house
Oh no.
sort of thing. But he is so wild, so inventive, and his movies are so full of fun and vibrant life. And a lot of people look super hot in them. It's the other component. Like, he knows how to make people hot. So he's got that going for him.
He knows how to make hot people make you feel incredibly uncomfortable, just like a horror movie would. There we go.
There we go. We squared that circle. Gina, where can people find you on these here internets?
I write about movies and television at thespool.net. I recently just wrapped up recapping HBO's Lovecraft Country. I'm also in the process of taking my own blog out of hiatus at ginaradcliffe.com. And you can find me ranting and raving and losing my mind on a daily basis on Twitter at Porcelain72.
Do it today, people. Check it out. Of course, this is coming out just before Halloween, so we want people to be safe for Halloween. We also want them to fucking vote.
Please, God.
Please, God. In the 4 years we have been doing this has been a wonderful safe haven, and not only for us, but we've been told by our audience, and we believe you. But there's a better way, y'all. I know there's still going to be dangers and travails in this world, but let's work towards improving them rather than just setting fire to all the walls around us. So please, for the love of God, just mark that dot next to the person who has a D in their fucking name. And then we can work on all sorts of cool progressive things on the local and state level to build up people who might perfectly represent what we want in this world. But I'll tell you one fucking thing is that Joe Biden isn't going to lose the parents of over 500 fucking innocent children. So for the love of God, vote.
If you vote Joe Biden, I might be able to see my niece again.
Yes, I would like to hold babies. Okay? That's something I would like to fucking do.
Watch horror movies. Don't live in one.
Yes. Exactly. Can't put it any better than that.
Perfect. And with that, of course, next time we will be talking more Hannibal. And of course, as we dip into November, we'll be celebrating Thanksgiving in two special ways. One, we'll be talking about one of the few genuine Thanksgiving horror movies. With a very special guest. And of course, the on Thanksgiving, the episode no one ever listens to, we're going to be playing Saw's Giving, where you decide what of the Saw sequels you want us to watch, because we haven't watched any of them. What's the most confusing? What will drive us insane? You tell us, and we will watch it. Believe it or not, that's what we're doing. Saw's Given, everybody. Be a part of it. The body count will continue. So for myself, for Gina and Inkoo. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Oh, should I also say bye?
You don't have to.
Say goodbye right now.